Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Masters of Product Marketing. Today, I am joined by fellow Englishman Ali Hanyalolu, who will be delivering today his competitive intelligence continuum. Ali is the head of global product marketing at Akeneo. And without further ado, over to you, Ali.
Great. Thanks, Max. And thanks to the PMA for hosting this and having me here. So hello, everyone. Appreciate you taking the time to join me for this session on something that I call the competitive intelligence continuum. I'm going to share with you this framework, if you will, that I've used to help me in my work as a product marketer when it comes to competitive intelligence, analysis, and positioning, but also as a means to coach others as well, to help them be able to gather the right kinds of intelligence, make sure they're checking all the boxes, but turning that into something that is useful, actionable, and strategic as well. So a little bit more about me. So I have a very easy name, as you can see. That's just why I put it there phonetically for you all. I've been in product marketing now for, let's just say, more than 15 years. We won't go any further than that. And prior to that, I was actually in pre-sale, so SE, technical, what have you. My work has been in the software industry primarily, from licensed package software to the cloud and SaaS today. I know that some of you who are online right now are watching this maybe are not in the software industry, and that's okay. I'm going to keep that in mind. This will still be relevant and useful to you. Now, areas of product marketing that I am most passionate about are definitely anything related to storytelling. It's how I describe what a product marketer does. One of the big things we do is we are storytellers. But obviously, why I'm here today, competitive intelligence is something that also gets me really excited and I'm very passionate about. I've been doing for a while now. But a new area that I am just recently starting to get into is something called product-led growth. I'm not going to go into that. You can look that up. But this is something I've gained a real interest and fascination for, and it's something I'm keen to learn more about as well. Personally, my passion is photography. So for those of you who cannot read Cyrillic or don't speak Russian, that is photography in Russian. And the reason I did that is because, more specifically, my hobby is I collect cameras and lenses from the former Soviet Union. Lots of history there. Most of the lenses are terrible, but it's something that I gained a real interest in. So it's great to see some of you are now joining us online. I'm just going to look through live and I can see some familiar names. Hello, friends. But I also see people from global audience. So I see my fellow Brits are online, and I see my fellow Americans are online from across multiple time zones. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much. If you have questions or comments or maybe additional ideas that I haven't covered, please put them in the chat. I'm going to go through them during the presentation as well as at the end. So we'll capture them in there as they come up. Welcome, everybody. So product marketing in my career, my very first job in product marketing was competitive intelligence and positioning. That was my first role. And in fact, I recommend anyone who is either wants to get into product marketing or maybe you're looking to hire a junior product marketer. Competitive intelligence and positioning is a great thing to get into first. Why? You can right away get to know the landscape and who the players are in there, as well as your own offerings. It's a great way to be able to get exercises into messaging and positioning, especially coming up with differentiators. And it's a chance for that person to get exposed to other functions across the organization from the top to the bottom. So highly recommend this is the way to start with product marketing. And the very first thing that I created was something like this. It wasn't this one. I grabbed this one online. But it was the competitive comparison matrix for customers. So yes, we had a situation whereby there was a competitor who was starting to steal some of our customers. So the natural reaction I had was, let's create a competitive comparison matrix to show how great we are and how the competitor really doesn't have what we have. And yes, I even used Harvey balls like this one did. Let me just tell you right now, I'm going to start up front. Don't create these. don't make the same mistake I did. Don't create these for your customers more specifically. I don't even know what the Harvey balls represent in these things. What does partially supported mean? Is that 50%? Or is it some of it? Who says that? Is it to you or somebody else? Don't do these for your customers, please. I also created these kinds of things too right away. So I worked on getting the information on the competitor, and I created some internal competitive battle cards. Do create these for your internal audiences. They are super helpful. They're great one-stop shop to understand who that competitor is, what they do, and how you can position against them or maybe with them. So this was something else that I created too as a particular deliverable that I had on my list. And let me tell you, I spent a long time understanding that competitor first and then the others as well. Hours upon hours online on the competitor's websites, installing or getting set up with their technology. The list goes on, countless hours. Great learning. A lot of time was taken up. And the way I saw it was that this competitive work were moments in time, that they were singular tasks that had to be done, and then we were good. So I would go off, find out what I could about the competition, and then that would fuel then just creating some positioning. But there's a problem with that. And this I learned pretty quickly, and it's still the case today, is that if you limit the scope of the work that you do in competitive intelligence and positioning, there are implications. So just providing, here's what the competitor does and here's what we do and look how great we are, I've tend to find that some salespeople with good intentions will use that literally. And what I mean by that is that they will take that and tell the customer that or the prospect. You don't want to do that. Why? Well, one reason is your competitors are doing exactly the same thing. That's just creating confusion. You might actually be setting yourself up for failure, because what you may be doing is setting it up to say, for the customer to tell you or the prospect, well, you know what? I only need those 3 things that your competitor does. So the 27 others that you guys have, I don't want to pay for. Now you set yourself up into a hole. The other thing is that marketing isn't differentiated. So many times I've looked at a particular vendor and their peers and alternatives, and they all say the same thing, pretty much. And from a decision maker's perspective, you look at that and you go, well, you all do the same thing, so I'll just pick one based on price. Or you know what, forget it. We'll just stick with what we've got. That's not the situation you want to be in. Internally, when you work with if you're not providing this to say product management or R&D or others, there is a risk of creating Me Too products, as I call them. Now, there's nothing wrong with coming up with products and capabilities that are equivalent to what's in the market today. But if they don't factor in how that is being done, the approaches that are taken for addressing customer problems, then the market will react with, we don't need you. And that becomes a Me Too feature. Likewise, related to that, if you're working on go-to-market strategies, you'll find that without understanding the landscape and the players who are there and how they're positioning themselves and how they're being perceived, that can negatively impact the success of your go-to-market strategy, simply because you are coming along with go-to-market that's already in a penetrated and crowded space, as opposed to finding something unique. But more importantly than all that, it's affecting your customers. So the clever people at Gartner, they actually quantifiably studied this, and they found that the information that they're getting from vendors is very good. It's high quality. But when customers experience information that is contradictory in nature because they are looking at multiple options, it makes it really hard for them to make an informed purchase decision. And as a result, they found that those customers are 153% more likely to settle for a course of action smaller and less disruptive than originally planned. That is, they reduce the scope of the project and probably the budget associated with it, or even worse than that, they stick with status quo. That's the downside of treating competitive intelligence as just this one-off thing that is just about saying how great you are. So what I found was actually it is a cycle, is what's happening here. It's not a one-time instance of get the intelligence and then communicate that in some way. It's a constant cycle that you have to constantly refine, especially today. So what I mean by that is that the markets are crowded. There's more and more options available to our buyers and our customers. Things are changing rapidly. Once I found that in many cases, once I communicated some particular insight or positioning, it was out of date pretty quick because the competitor had caught up or a new competitor had come along or whatever it may be. And then this year, and I see that question has come through from Matthew already about factoring the effects of the pandemic. As we shift to more online options, because that's the only option, what you're going to see is that there are more choices for these decision makers to be able to acquire technology to help them with their business problems, with new problems that they are facing today that they have to address very quickly. So that statistic that I showed you before, I'm going to assume that that decision-making quandary is even greater than ever. So here is our opportunity with our competitive intelligence and competitive positioning, especially as product marketers, to be able to help our customers make sense of that noise, as well as help our own teams to be able to help our customers as well. And that's why this cycle here is a lot more complex than these 2 points. And it consists of multiple areas in this cyclical framework that I call the competitive intelligence continuum. So I'm going to go through each element of these with respect to starting with identifying needs, asking questions, gathering intelligence and analyzing that, turning that into something that can be used, and then actually getting feedback and measurement on the impact of that, which should then either spawn new questions to start this cycle again, or refine the questions that were originally asked in order to get greater communication insight, better intel, and refine your measurement too. That's why this is a continuum. What I'm going to do is I could spend days talking about this subject in depth. I'm going to give you sort of a checklist of things within each of these areas that either I ask myself or as I'm coaching others, I ask them to consider. But I'll also give you some examples too of some tools that I've used as well that can help with this. Some of them you may be familiar with, and so I'm going to give you maybe some different approaches to using them, and some of them may be new to you as well. There's lots I would love to cover in here that I won't have an opportunity to do so. So please feel free to ping me afterwards if you'd like to talk about any of those other things more. All right, let's go into the first one, and that's identifying needs. Really, this is all about question asking, but smart, intelligent question asking. And what you need to do is, before just reacting to a competitive situation, take a moment and ask questions. What is the business need here? And so you pretty much could ask things like, who is the audience? And what we mean by who is the audience? Who is the audience for this intelligence and the insight that would come from it? Is this something for your executive team? Is it for your sales team? Is it going to be used by marketing or product management to help them with the roadmap? Or is this something we specifically want to use as part of our go-to-market strategy? That's what I mean by who is the audience. Key fundamental question before you start spinning up cycles with the other things. Why is this happening? I'll come back to this point in a moment when we talk about analysis, but it's really key to ask the question about why a particular trend or competitive threat is happening in the marketplace. How is the competition involved in this? So I tend to find, in many cases, competitive news or releases or positioning are an effect of something else that is happening in the market. That is a macro trend that you need to be considering. I'm going to say this multiple times. And so your question is, how does that macro trend impact what the competitors are doing? And then more specifically, the questions around us is, well, what are the competitors actually doing? What are those new capabilities? What is this new offering that they've got? What is this new industry that they're going after? Those are good questions, of course. And then ask the question. This could be the question itself. How is it going to impact us? Does it? Maybe it doesn't. Not every competitive situation is something you should be worrying about. So getting these questions down up front is really key, and you're going to continue to refine these as well. Now, I'm bringing up comparisons of vendors right away here at this point. Why? In a moment, you're going to see it's going to help you frame those questions that you ask. Now, analysts do vendor comparisons all the time. You guys have seen these, right? You know, waves, quadrants, grids, whatever. There are lots of them out there. They're all really good and really insightful, and you're going to use this in your competitive work. That doesn't mean you can't create your own, which is something that I've done many times. Create your own grid. Call it what you want. Call it the magic quadrant, whatever it may be. The magic wave, maybe. But essentially come up with a very simple representation of where each of your competitors live in relation to you or to each other. Why? Not every competitor is a direct one. So this is an example of one that I've used a lot, which is essentially mapping the competitors on this chart, whether they are a direct competitor to what you do, or maybe they're indirect, which is essentially saying they don't have the same products and services that you offer, but they're addressing the same customer or the same budget maybe, or they're just taking a very different approach to a particular problem or situation. The other axis that I've got here is this an emerging competitor, or is this somebody who's been around for a while? And the reason I do this one is simply because I want to see who is emerging that will be a direct competitor to us. That's really interesting. And this can help frame those questions. Like I said, we don't know too much yet about what these guys are doing. We'll get to that. But this just helps us, based on what we know today, what is going on. You will refine this over time. You will look back and see how things have shifted as well. And those axes that I've got here, that's just an example. Pick your own that makes sense to you. So this is another view. Same competitors I had a moment ago, but I've just changed the axes and the quadrants so that I'm comparing point tools to solutions and whether they are a particular niche player. So they're going after maybe a very specific sub-segment with a particular industry. And then something maybe is very broad, goes after everybody. You can label each quadrant and identify which ones matter to you. So you can maybe label the top right one as being full stack solution provider. You can call it whatever you want, but that gives you a label for that competitor. Later on, you'll see that this is something you'll keep throughout the continuum because you can use this as part of, for example, new hire onboarding. So do this up front. It'll be really helpful just for you to help make sense of the landscape and who you should be focusing on. All right, so that's a little bit about identifying needs up front. Simple, really important. Unfortunately, most of us don't do that, including me sometimes, but really important thing to do. Next step, of course, is gathering the intelligence. There's so much out of it there. So what are my suggestions? What is the checklist of places that I would recommend going to find intelligence? So some of these sound obvious. Competitor's website, yes, of course. But how many of you are actually going to look at your publicly traded competitors' annual reports and quarterly filings with the SEC here in the US? Goldmine of competitive intel. You'll find all kinds of great, juicy information on those publicly traded companies, especially if you're competing with some of the big giants that are out there. They have to reveal a lot of things. They have to reveal changes or their threats and opportunities. That's a great place to go. Obviously, you want to look at things like how are they positioning themselves. And one of the things I do is I go look at a lot of the vendors will have on their website, will say something like solutions or use cases or something like that. I go read that stuff first because I want to know who are they going after, how are they talking about them, and what problems are they addressing. That's more interesting to me as a product marketer. Of course, look at their feature matrices that they have on their website, their pricing, et cetera, all good stuff. Now, for maybe you've got competitors who are not publicly traded. So then how do you get the company information? Places like Crunchbase, Owler, those are all great. I usually get some nuggets a little bit out there. More static long-term information, but good to have for things like battle cards. But maybe you're not considering some other sources as well. Zoom Info or BuiltWith. I go to there sometimes simply because I want to find out which industries a particular competitor is playing in, which maybe accounts, companies are using that technology, and so on. That's actually good for that. These aren't typically what they use for. They use for pre-sales many times, but this is something you can leverage as well. There are also other tools for things like SEO keywords. So there are a number of tools and technologies out there which are great that will give you what are the search keywords that are directing people to a particular website. So typically that's done for your domain. Run it on your competitor's domain. And that way you can see what people are searching for and what they are landing on. So another one for you there. Another one is LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn. No, not just to see what's on the feed and what they're posting, but if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can see the hiring trends. So that can be a source of intelligence that you can use strategically to see if there are any spikes in hiring over time and maybe why that occurred. One example was we saw a particular competitor who had a hiring spike. It was a spike. And of course, some people say, oh my goodness, they just hired a whole bunch of people. They must be doing really well. No, they just acquired a company, and it was everybody making the transition over to be in that company as part of LinkedIn. So there you go. Glassdoor, fun one. Go look at the negative reviews for a competitor on Glassdoor. It's quite surprising sometimes what disgruntled employees will reveal on Glassdoor. Yeah, be careful here. Don't use this maliciously, but it may give you insight into some internal goings on that maybe you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Whether it's true or not, take it with a large pinch of salt, but it may give you some indicator if it's repeated. Now, if you enjoy spending time doing all that, good for you. But there's a secret that many of us know. There are some amazing competitive intelligence tools out there in the market. Now, I'm not going to promote any much today, but that you can find them out on your own. I recommend reaching out to all of them, talk to them, learn about them, because what they will do is they will save you so much time in gathering intelligence from thousands of sources and presenting that to you in an organized, focused way that lets you concentrate on analyzing and turning that into something. They're all great, and I highly recommend you check them out if you're not using one today. Internal sources, obviously, but what I hear when people say like, oh, who have you asked about the competition? It's sales, and you should do that. Talk to them. Look in your CRM. But there's a big but here. I'm going to be honest with you guys. That's one lens that you are looking at, and frankly, a biased one. You should do it, but I recommend talking to others within your organization. Who else? Your marketing, your marketing friends in corporate marketing or content, social, etc. Many times they've been looking at what the competitors are saying and doing as well. So they may be looking at content they're creating, and your content team may be like, you know what? Those guys over there, they're doing great stuff with thought leadership. That's good to know. What are they doing on social, etc.? What are they doing for their campaigns, and so on? So talk to them, see what they've got. They're definitely going to be constituents of what you are working on, and they're going to love it. But you should ask them what they're finding out too. Your product management team, R&D, they've been looking at the competitors, or at least they should be, in order to understand how functionality works today and maybe what they can do. So find out what they've gathered already from maybe a feature function perspective, but also with respect to you be able to share back with them different viewpoints that will help them with their feature definitions and roadmaps too. I've got more for you. This is another one. Most people don't realize this. People involved in finance, especially those who have to deal with investors, because a lot of the time they have to respond to investors or present to them what is going on in the landscape, and they've probably done some of their own research already. So talk to them. They are definitely going to be constituents. They're going to love what you find out and share with them, because they will leverage that too. but talk to them to see what they've got. I've found, especially publicly traded companies, but even those who are not or are smaller, talking to your CFO and on down, they will share stuff with you for sure. As you can tell, it's not a single source internally. And somebody just made the comment here as well. Amy, do you ever find internal sources and tribal knowledge can be outdated? So that's the key thing I want to point out. It's tribal knowledge. And yeah, sometimes it's outdated. You're going to face situations where somebody be like, I just found something amazing about this competitor. And you'll be sitting there going, yeah, we heard about that 3 months ago. That's your role. That's your role to analyze it, which I'm coming in a moment, to be able to sort out what is meaningful and what is not. And that's just going to happen. Amy, as you rightly said, it's about finding the so what. Let's keep going. Analyst reports. I've mentioned this before. Yeah, look at the analyst reports. They're always doing vendor comparisons, vendor analyses. Look through those. But if you have a subscription or a relationship with respect to people like Forrester and Gartner and IDC and all the other guys, you should be able to have inquiries with them. These are essentially your opportunities to go to an analyst, a subject matter expert in the field who is talking to your competitors and your customers, and find out from them how you are positioned in the market. Now, don't go to the analyst and say, can you tell us everything you know about competitor X? They probably won't do that. They have their reputation on the line. But if you come to them in a smart way with a specific set of questions about maybe how you are thinking about how you are differentiated in the market, for example, they will talk to you and share with you back a response to those questions that you will be able to, that will help you later on when it comes to understanding what's going on, how you are positioned, and what your messaging should be. And many times they will share with you what a particular competitor is doing that they like or do not like. That will just come naturally from them. But this is something I highly recommend. And then there's influencers. So these are people like your solution partners, SIs, for example. It could be developers, people in your ecosystem. In many cases, if they are good friends with you, they probably have worked or are working with your competitors too. So you've got some advocates there, reach out to them and bounce ideas and see what's going on. Also, your customers are influencers too. Am I saying go ask your customer about your competition? I mean, you could. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. It depends on the relationship you have with them. And we'll come back to win-loss analysis later on. But this is actually more like things like reviews on G2, for example. They will look for your competitors and see what people are liking about them. And that's going to be another source of intel for you. Sunanda just posted on here another great source of intel. Patent applications, great one. I've used that in the past as well, not just to see what they are thinking about, but then maybe details about what approach they are taking to solve a particular problem. That's a really good one, Sunanda, thanks. So that's some sources of gathering intel, kind of a checklist, but I hope some things and ideas from there for different sources that maybe you hadn't considered before. So you got the intel, great. You just throw it out there and fingers crossed it all works. No, you got to think about it. This is where, if you're in product marketing, this is where we can really help anybody in this role as well. And the first thing I advise people to do, especially if it's a direct major competitor or it's some big news, is have a little bit of a breathing period, a cool down, and discuss it. So either you may have your trusted sort of circle of people that you work with, or maybe it's just amongst your team. But when there are big news, just take a moment, get on a call, doesn't have to be long, and just talk through the news or the intelligence that has been gathered. What you'll find is that this cooling period will help you get some clarity. It will help you understand what is, whether it's really new or whether it was old news. Been burned by that before as well. Whether this is a big deal or not. And I recommend doing this. You can do this however you want. Is this happen reactively, or is this a regular cadence that you set up? But it's really good to talk about it with others so you don't just immediately react. And the other thing related to that is compare. I don't mean feature comparison kind of thing. I mean, take that intel and see if it has come up in the past from another competitor. See how it compares to what you are thinking about as well. You know, sometimes the reaction is you see a competitor make an announcement, and you're like, oh, great, we're too late. Well, we were going to go after that market. Now they're there. But just take a moment and look, because you may well find that they're actually taking a very different approach and they're not quite going after the same market or with the same solution. So do that comparison in different dimensions. The other thing you have to look at when it comes to competitive intel is something called STEEP. This has got nothing to do with T. I'll let you figure that one out. This is an acronym that stands for Society, Technology, Economy, Environment, Political. It really is just an analysis framework in order to get the big picture. Big news that comes from your competitors, as I mentioned before, is typically influenced by what is happening in the market. And this is an analysis structure that will help you understand what is going on from different dimensions. It doesn't mean all 5 have to be looked at. No, it just means look at these 5 and see if that is what's influencing what is going on in the competitive landscape. Lots of great resources online for this. I recommend checking it out. And then there's good old SWOT. Now, I used to assume that people knew what SWOT meant. And I found out not everybody does. So I'm not going to make any assumptions here. I'm going to go through the back to the basics. But as you've seen in here, I'm going to call it SWOT++. I'm going to share with you some different approaches, or maybe if you like, how to use SWOTs that get created, because a lot of the time I find they're not. So what is a SWOT? Real quick. It looks like this. It's another quadrant, but slightly different one. This is very traditional. What you do is you take your competitor or yourself, your own company, and you write down in these 4 boxes, what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? Now, that's of an internal view. That's looking at it from their perspective. That's what's going on in their organization, or it's what they're delivering and what have you. And then you write down, and it really is a brainstorming session. What are the opportunities and what are their threats? This is an external view. These are the external impacts on that company. And you put this down, and it's just a nice way to look at that particular competitor. And what I've done, what I've seen done, is that we end there. We share this with everybody and go, hey, here's the SWOT for the competitor or for us. So what? Great, interesting. What do we do with it? SWOT is probably the most strategic tool that you have in your arsenal. And let me tell you why. Take what you just did there, and then what you write down or type out, just put it aside and orient it differently. Now you'll see here we've got an axis with strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and we match them. So we take those internal strengths and match them with relevant external opportunities. I'll explain this in a moment. Internal weaknesses match with external opportunities. You get the idea. So what do we do here? Probably the most interesting box is the top left and the bottom right, because this is going to help you decide on strategy. Why? Let's take the internal strengths match with external opportunities for that competitor. What this means is that there is a big opportunity that this competitor either is or will go after, and they have the people, process, and technology to be able to be successful with that. That means this is where your competitor could potentially take market share away from you, or they are just going to see growth and success. So your strategic decision you have to make is, do we go after that too? Or do we find other green pastures? Because we just are not going to be able to catch up here. They're already there. The bottom right one, internal weaknesses match with external threats. So this competitor has a threat that's coming from the market or elsewhere that they are not ready to be able to defend. They have a soft spot with nothing to cover it. This could be your strategic play. If you have an internal strength, you may be able to hit them where it hurts and go after that. You could do the same with the other boxes, but I think you get the idea here is how this can help turn competitive intelligence through analysis into strategic decisions and communications. Another alternative, going back to that first one I showed you, is this, which I've done before as well, is actually you do it for you and your competitor at the same time. And you put their strengths and weaknesses with your opportunities and threats. And then you do that mapping exercise, that matching I mentioned before. Because what's happening here is that you can actually look to say, well, that competitor, they've got this strength over us, but that's matched to this threat to us. Therefore, we better watch out. And we've got to make a decision here strategically and tactically of either how we defend ourselves here. And likewise, if we have an opportunity that competitor is not able to go after, what are we going to do in our go-to-market that's going to be able to ensure that we protect our turf and be able to lock that competitor out? That's where SWOT comes in and is such a powerful tool. It's more than just here's 4 boxes of what's about a competitor. This is fantastic. So now we get to communicating, or as I like to call it, sharing. It really is about sharing. Now, what do we turn these things into? I'm looking from a product marketing lens here, but first, what do we all create in product marketing? Unique selling point, our great USPs. Do that. That's great. It really is helpful little sound bites for your sellers to be able to focus in on leading to differentiators. But more than that, you're going to have to do a lot more to help them. And that's objections. So as you go through the question asking, intelligence gathering, and analysis phase, objections are going to come up. And those objections will either be objections from your prospects and customers and partners and others that they are bringing up with you with respect to the competition. So this is not objections that I'm talking about with respect to your pricing or how you do business or what your service is like. I'm talking about, you know what, why should we go with you guys when those players over there give us everything we need for half the cost? Making that up, but you get the idea. Then there are objections that come up from the competition because they're saying things about you. So think of it from those 2 lenses. What are your customers going to say? And what would your competitor say about you? And then have ready responses for how to handle that. I'm not talking about cool scripts. I'm just talking about simple, easy to read bullet points about how to overcome that objection and move the conversation forward in your direction, hopefully. And then the flip side of that is landmines or traps, whatever you want to call them. Set those. These are essentially intelligent questions or topics to bring up that will lead to a customer realizing that you are the only option for them and that competitor is not going to be able to help out with that. So they should be needs-based, problem-based, and so on. But find these with a little additional commentary and next steps to take. Now, some of you may be creating a feature benefits matrix as part of a architecture. And if you're not, please feel free to contact me afterwards. I can help you out with that. But as well as having a list of the features that you have in your offering and what the benefits are you also marking if they are differentiators or not? And if they are differentiators, how? And if they're not, who's the competitor who also does that? Make that part of your matrix, because that will then turn into what are known as truly unique differentiators. I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to be talking about more about that strategic reporting as well that we talked about a moment ago. How to make your differentiator truly unique. So if you've done Challenger before, whether it's sales or we've done Challenger messaging, you've seen this already. This is what it's from, but it's really powerful. And it contains 3 steps that you need to consider, a checklist of what makes something truly unique. It must be something that only you can claim. And I use the word claim there. Doesn't mean you're the only one with that capability, but you're the only one who's claiming it. So there's a difference, right? 2, must be of value to the customer. What we mean by value is it solving their particular problems? And 3, there must be some kind of evidence. Evidence isn't necessarily, oh, our good friends over here said that we're the ones who do it. No, it's things like it solves this problem, and the evidence is, and as a result, our customers have seen their productivity increase by 50%. That's what we mean by evidence. Have these three things, and you have a truly unique differentiator that you can pass on to your content marketing and others to be able to leverage as part of messaging and positioning and go-to-market strategy. And then there was that strategic part I shared with you. So one thing I advise doing is, on a regular cadence, create a briefing, whether that's a Word document, a PowerPoint, whatever, that is written for or with in mind your executive team, but is available for everyone in your company to leverage. Do this monthly, quarterly, biannually, whatever makes sense for your organization. And key things that should be in there. Tie it to market trends. So don't treat every competitive news as its own thing. Look at the market trend that's happening today, and then bring the news into that to paint a bigger picture. So if, for example, I'm just going to throw something out there, voice assistants is a market trend that you are part of and your competitors are too. Okay, great. That's your market trend. What is going on, and what are the competitors doing in there? Always lead with your direct competitors. Those are the ones that people care about. Remember that quadrant, create your own quadrant at the beginning. Focus on them first. The other smaller guys, bring them up as they fit into that trend, and if they don't, put them in an appendix. Keep it forward facing. It's too easy to go and say, well, last year, this is what's happened. Okay, not really interesting, but put that in an archive somewhere or an appendix as well. Lean forward. What is going on? What might happen next? Because that way you can provide guidance and recommendations. You want to be able to seen as being more strategic in your organization. This is a surefire way to do it. Now, does the guidance have to be like orders for the rest of the company? Well, you should actually put down, what your recommendations are and guidance for whom, but they are guidance and recommendations. They may not be right. You may just be making an intelligent, experience-based decision. That's okay, but put it in there, which is essentially saying, here's what we should do about this particular area. Here's what we should do with that competitor against this trend. But where will it live? So many places. Slack is one way to share this, but don't put the things that have long legs like the messaging, the positioning, battle cards, strategic reports. Don't put them in Slack because people won't find them. Use Slack or Teams or what have you as a means to gather intel. That's your vehicle. So people can, if they hear things, they can put it in there and you can track that. And if they're just sort of news and sound bites you want to get out to everybody, that's the way to do it. So otherwise, create a portal. Doesn't matter what you create it on. I've done it on Google Sites. If you've got a sales enablement platform, awesome. Whatever it may be, put somewhere where people know to go to. So at any point in time, they can go and look at what's happening on a particular competitor or what have you. And if you're using a CRM, that's another great place to make that messaging, positioning, and intel available to your sales teams. A lot of the sales enablement tools, the competitive intelligence tools, they have integrations with the major CRM tools that can connect to fields in your opportunity record so that relevant information based on the opportunity is shown. I mentioned this before, but if you don't have a competitive landscape session as part of your new hire onboarding, do so. And it doesn't matter who it's for. It's not just for salespeople. I've done this now for multiple companies for many years, and competitive landscape sessions for new hires have been the most well received in terms of the value they've got from it. And in this case, it was half the room were engineers and the other half were people in corporate functions like finance and HR, and they loved it. So definitely do that as a regular cadence. And then just come up with some way to have regular updates, weekly, monthly newsletters, for example, where you can provide the main news and resources to be able to learn more and what to do about it. We're coming up to the end. Feedback and measure is the last part of this. So pretty simply, there's lots of things we could do here, but these are some things that I've done. So look at your deal cycle and understand how that intel and the tools and information that you've created are being used in opportunities and the impact that they've had. This way, you can very quickly see, not just in terms of who the competitors are out there, but what positioning is helping move deals forward versus that isn't. And the one macro global metric that I've used in the past is win rate. What is your win rate? If you're 90% and higher, you are world class. But it really does depend on a lot of factors there. So measure your win rate, establish your baseline, and see how you do from that. It could even be a way, if you want to have a KPI or metric for your product marketing team, that could be one as well. Win-loss analysis. I'm not going to go into detail on this one because there's already so many great resources and sessions here with the PMA on this topic. But of course, always remember with win-loss analysis is do win and loss analysis. Don't skew. Some people only want to do win without actually factoring, well, why did we lose, and vice versa. And all of this combined should then be helping you refine those initial business need questions that you've got based on where your deal's going, for example. Is your win rate going down? All right, that should mean we've got to spawn off some new questions as well. So that is my competitive intelligence continuum. It's been very helpful for me to be able to get the full scope of the work that needs to be done. And as you can imagine, this really is, in many cases, it's a function or a team in and of itself. In some organizations, that's the case. But even if it's something that's part of just your role as a product marketer or you do across the team, this will help be your checklist of things that you can do and just allocate your time accordingly. The key thing to remember, if I give you a key takeaway, is don't treat competitive intelligence and competitive positioning as one-off reactive exercises. Instead, think of it as a continuous cycle that you're constantly refining and is helping determine strategies and tactics and goals and objectives that you set with your organization. You have to keep doing this if you want to stay ahead of the curve. And especially this year and today, things are changing so quickly. You cannot rest on your laurels or just stand on your feet. You have to keep moving in this area. So I'm going to leave you with a quote that I found related to this as another key takeaway. This quote was actually from the book A Scandal in Bohemia, which is a Sherlock Holmes book by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So if you want to read this in the voice of Benedict Cumberbatch, please go ahead. I can't do a Benedict Cumberbatch impression, so it's just a great quote I'm going to read out to you, which is, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts." How true is this in the competitive intelligence positioning world? We tend to react without thinking through what this actually means. So before I let you all go, a couple of resources. So Product Marketing Alliance, of course. Thank you again, guys, for hosting this. This has been a great series. But there is actually a section of resources called Competitive Intelligence. So recommend checking those out. There is also an organization on this topic. There is a whole group and field of people who get very scientific and geek out on this topic, and it's called the Strategic and Competitive Intelligence Professionals. So that's scip.org. A lot of resources up there. They do a lot of events and training sessions, and there are people who are analyst geeks who know this far better than me. I recommend checking out that resource too. And then there are also the resources that are provided by those competitive intelligence tool vendors out there. Now, I've used crayons, and I've been a crayon customer in the past. This is not a promotion. They're all great. So I recommend checking them all out. Loads of great tools that they provide. Either I'm going to say to everybody else, I apologize. Crayon, you guys owe me a drink. And then if I may do a shameless promotion, I have a publication on Medium called Provoking the Status Quo. I invite you to go check it out. And I do actually have an article on there about why you should not create those external facing comparative comparisons that I showed you way at the beginning. So with that, I wanted to, first of all, thank you for listening to me to talk for almost 50 minutes. I went a little bit over. As you can tell, I told you I was passionate about this topic. But really, thank you. I hope that was helpful. Please reach out and connect with me. If you've got any questions on what I've covered or if I've missed something, or something else, I'd be happy to hear from you all. I'm going to do a quick scroll through of the comments and see if there were any questions or anything that I missed. We talked about the pandemic. Madeline asks, do you have a recommended measurement tool to identify placement of competitors who fit in the same quadrant as others? Say multiple new market entrants. Okay. I think I know what you mean, which is, and please ping me afterwards if I'm answering this incorrectly or reading it incorrectly. But is there a way to be able to quantify where someone lands, especially when you've got a new competitor in, so you're not just throwing a logo on a wall? The answer is yes. Pick a dimension that can be broken down into separate things. So I gave you the example of, for example, the point tool versus solution. So you can score that against things like feature set, like what's their feature set? How many products do they have? Do they provide services? And so on. And then score and weight that, and then that will help you land somewhere. I hope that's what you're looking for, Madeline. What is the best way to research competitive product pricing? Where sometimes it's not possible to find it from their website, especially for SaaS technology products. Remember those analyst inquiries I talked about? Bring it up. Be smart about it. Be tactful. But a lot of the time, you may not get actual pricing, but maybe what you'll get is pricing models or ranges. Maybe your partners as well, if you've got a good relationship with them and they are also providing solutions based on your competitors. Again, they may not give actual pricing. They probably can't give that to you, but they may be able to give you an idea of where the range is or how the model is. Diana, lovely to have you on. Thank you. I can see more friends there. Hey, everybody. Darren, is it recommended to look at historical data for pricing trends or competitor patterns? I wouldn't look at historical data for pricing trends. The only time I might see that is if they're going into a new market with respect to a region or a particular segment in terms of an audience. And they're bringing their pricing down because they're offering a cheaper offering that's got less capabilities and so on. Competitor patterns historically, yes, do have that to reference, but don't make strategic decisions or your messaging or positioning or go-to-market strategy be based on that. Use that as a reference guide to give you an indication of future projection. All right. Awesome questions and comments. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much, Ali. Thanks so much for a great talk. And thank you for everyone for tuning in and asking such great questions as well. Hope to see you all soon.
Take care, everybody. See ya.